All right, hello everybody. Welcome to week 4 geometry. So if you're at home, make sure you guys are taking good notes on the essential question and turning that in at the end of our session. And if you're here in person, you automatically get your full 10 points. So I love to see your smiling faces in person, so try and make it out to campus if at all possible. So the only part that is not included in the notes that I shared with you is your essential question. So whether you're here with me in person or you're at home, please take a quick minute and copy down your question for the week. For those of you watching at home, give me a green check mark when you're ready, please. All right, fabulous. So if you haven't had a chance to finish copying it, it will be up again at the end of our session today. So what we're doing today is we're studying for our Unit 1 test. So through the file transfer library, or if you're here in person, I gave you a formula sheet, and I also gave you the notes for the day. So if you have the formula sheet, can you please give me a smiley face if you were able to print that off? Awesome. And I know the people in person have them because I handed it to them. All right, so first thing we're going to work on is prisms. So let's try example number 1 together. This is what we started covering last week, and surface area and volume are the two that I would like to find for this shape. So we do have a formula for each of those. If you guys want to check out your formula sheet, the ones you're looking for is on the far right column, and it's under the word prism. So see if you can locate the formulas for those on your formula sheet. Maybe highlight them, put a little mark by them. You are allowed to use that on your quizzes and tests. It's not cheating. So see if you were able to locate those okay. So surface area, your formula is 2b plus p times h. And last week it was part of your essential question to learn what the big B stood for. And then our volume formula is going to be base times height. So I want you guys to take a quick moment and see if you can fill in the numbers that would belong under big B, what would belong under P, what would belong under H. So take just a quick second and see how much of that you can fill in yourself, and then I will pop back on and do it with you. And Melissa, thanks for joining us. I gave you moderator privileges and closed captioning privileges, so whatever you type, your student will be able to see that. Last week we talked about how big B stands for the area of your base. So the first thing we need to recognize is which shape is my base. And this was part of my essential question. We learned that the base is always the one that has two identical shapes. So that would be your triangles in this case. So there's a base, there's a base. So if big B stands for the area of the base, I'm really looking for the area of that triangle. So let's think about how do I find the area of my shaded region. So the area of my triangle is 1/2 base times height. So that would be 1/2 8 times 6. So half of 48 would be 24. So big B is 24. So why can these other shapes not be my base? And the answer is because none of them have another side that matches. Your base is always going to be the one that has two identical shapes. This rectangle on the bottom is a 6 by 12. This rectangle on the back is an 8 by 12. They are not the same, so none of the rectangles can be your base. We'll talk about what this length is in just a minute, but it's going to be different than the 6 and the 8, so it is also not going to match any of the other sides. So your base has to be the triangle, because it's the only one that has two that matches. So now I get into the big P, which stands for the perimeter of the base. So we just said that the triangle is the base, and we know perimeter means add all what? Sides. Add all sides. So I have the 8 and the 6, but what about this third side? I don't know it right now. What formula do I have to use to find this missing side right here? Sabella? Pythagorean theorem. So I'm going to change colors so that way you can sort of follow my steps on the screen. I'm going to change to red. So we're going to do 6 squared plus 8 squared equals my missing side squared. Now how did I know I could use Pythagorean theorem? Because look what kind of a triangle it is. It's a right triangle. It gave me the little box that's telling me it's a right triangle, so therefore I know I can use Pythagorean. So a squared plus b squared equals my longest side, my hypotenuse squared. So let's finish solving this. I'd get 36 plus 64 equals x squared. So that would be 100 equals x squared. I don't want to know what x squared is. I want to know what x is. So I will square root both sides. And the square root of 100 is 10. Remember what square roots are? It's just what number times itself gives you that number. So 10 times 10 gives you 100. So that's how I got 10. So now for my P, P stands for perimeter of my base. If I know 1 is 8, 1 is 6, 1 is 10, the perimeter would mean add all three of those together. So 8 plus 6, 14, 14 plus 10 is 24. The last number that I'm missing is my height. Now when it says H for height, it's talking about height of your whole figure. So when you're looking at height, you're not talking about any number that's on your base. So see, I have 2 ends right now. I have 2 bases. But what's the height of that whole figure? Which number do you think I need to use? 12. I do need to use the 12. So what I like to do in my own mind is when I have a base, sort of tip the shape up in your own mind if you can, and then it's easier to pick out the height. Does that make sense? So when you have your 2 bases, tip it so it's sitting on its base, and then it's easier to pick out the height. So by the time I'm done solving that, I would get 48 plus 288, and that would give me 336 centimeters squared, because we're talking surface area, and area is always squared. Let me pause for a second, see if anyone has a question. If you're at home, feel free to ask questions, but just know that the students who are here with me can see what you're typing as well. So I'm going to change colors one more time. I'm going to go to a green color, and we're going to do volume together. Volume is really easy after what we just did, because volume is just area of the base times the height. We already found the area of my base, which is my triangle. It's 24. And what did we say the height of my whole figure was? 12. So 24 times 12 gives me 288, and that would be centimeters cubed. Volume is always cubed because volume is 3D. Volume is how much space fills in your whole figure, right? 3D. Surface area is squared because it's 2-dimensional. It's flat. Area is a flat surface. Volume is 3-dimensional. So 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional. What we're doing today, just so you guys know, there are 16 total slides, and I picked out one problem that's exactly like each test question. So we're really studying for your test right now. And your test, I believe, is either Monday or Tuesday. Monday might be a study day, and then your test is Tuesday, I believe. But there's no new content. So today is kind of the day to study. And then Monday you'll have another study day, but this will show you everything you're going to see on your test. So let's try example 2. This one says finding points in 3D. So we talked last week about how now my axes have kind of shifted a little bit. X is coming towards us, Y is going side to side, and Z is going up and down. So we have 3 dimensions. Let's talk about the point of A. Let's highlight A. And I want to see if we can write my 3 coordinates for A. What, comma, what. So there's an X, there's a Y, there's a Z. So let's do X first. So follow with your finger on the graph. X comes forward to what number? 4. Comes forward to 4. So that would be my X value. Because towards us would be positive, away from us would be negative. Now let's do my Y. Y is side to side. It goes to the side how many? 1, 2. So it goes Y2. And for Z, Z is your up and down. This one did not go up, it did not go down, so it's going to be a 0. So 4, 2, 0 is the point of A. So if I ask you that on a test, just make sure you're able to practice these and that they make sense. Let's try point B now. So everybody try that one on your own. And when you're done at home, please type in your answers. What is B? Great job. Everyone who is typing it in online, you did a fabulous job so far. So X is 2 because it came forward 2. Y, it went to the right 4. And Z, it's not up or down at all. Yes, you are very smart. Very smart. Let's try C. So X, Y, Z. Let's see what we're going to get for point C. Try it for just a second. Okay, anybody here in the room with me want to give me their solution? Sabella, what'd you get? 0, 2, 4. So it's not towards us, it's not away from us at all, so my X is 0. Then on the Y, it's positive 2. On the Z, it's up 4. So 0, 2, 4. Great job. Now I'm going to have you guys try graphing one on your own. So on the next slide, on your notes that I printed out for you, I gave you a blank 3D coordinate plane. I would like you guys to try and graph 4, -2, 5. So take a quick second and everyone try and graph that coordinate. On this particular graph, you're just going to notice that they just use dashed lines to represent your negative axes. It doesn't matter if it's solid or doesn't matter if it's just solid or dashed, but it just still represents negative. So what I do when I graph these is I'm going to draw in the lines like what they did in our last problem. So if I go back a quick slide, do you guys see how if it was 4 on the x-axis, they kind of drew a dot at 4, and then they're drawing their lines for each one? It just makes it a little bit easier when we're graphing. So if the x is 4, I'm going to go on my x-axis and come out to 4. So I'm going to draw that line in there. Out to 4, and I'm going to do a dot. Now if it's -2 for my y, which direction am I going? Left 2. Good job. So I'm going to go left 1, 2, and these are all approximate. Everyone okay so far? Okay, from that dot, where am I going to go if my z is 5? Where am I going to go? Good. Thanks, Jared. Jared said up 5. Perfect answer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's all approximate because we're in 3D now. Yes?
So you're not going all the way to 5, you're going up 5 steps?
You're only going up 5 steps, exactly. If all of my other numbers were 0, like say I had a 0x, a 0y, and then I went up 5, it would be right on that axis right here. But because now we're coming towards us and to the left, then we're going straight up from that point. It's like 3D is really hard to graph on a 2D surface, so we're just kind of making the best that we can. Yes, they do have the GeoGebra where you can graph in 3D, you know, if you guys have that downloaded on your computer. But otherwise, as long as you guys are making these tick marks for yourself, you're going to end up in the right spot.
Any of the negatives for x would be going up to the right?
So the negatives for x would be going backwards.
Okay.
That would be negative x. So if I said -3 for x, like just say I said that, I would go 1, 2, 3, and my dot would be right there, going backwards. Yeah. It's unique graphing in 3D because it's brand new for us, something new. So now what we're going to do is we're going to focus on our 3D formulas. We've seen these formulas before, but before we stopped with just the x's and the y's. So these are the same formulas as last semester, except now I'm adding in z's. So how are you going to find distance? Distance is where you subtract your two variables and square it, subtract, square it, subtract, square it. Midpoint, think of the middle. How do you find the middle of anything? You cut it in half, right? So that's how you find the middle of anything. So that's what's happening here. Adding them together, cutting it in half. Adding them together, cutting it in half. So these formulas I give you in your notes, keep these notes handy for your test. Let's try an example together. So ta-da, we're going to try a couple. Let's find the midpoint between 6, 7, negative 4 and negative 10, 3, 4. So look back at your formulas. Are we talking distance or are we talking midpoint? Midpoint. So can you guys try plugging your numbers in for me? Now, doesn't my formula have like x1, x2, y1, y2? How do I know which one goes where? Can somebody explain that to me? Anybody know? Okay, so we know automatically it's x, y, z, x, y, z. Everybody okay with that? It's alphabetical, right? But how do I know which ones are the ones, which ones are the twos? Whichever ones come first. Yep, whichever ones come first, we're going to give the ones. Whichever ones come second, get the twos. And someone typed in, it really doesn't matter which is true, because I could have all of these be the ones, I could have all of these be the ones. It doesn't matter, because in your formula, we're just adding them together anyway and dividing by 2. When you think you have your answer, type it in. So x plus your x divided by 2, y plus y divided by 2, z plus z divided by 2. So let's work out what we get. So for x, 6 plus a negative 10 is a negative 4. Negative 4 divided by 2, negative 2. Next, 7 plus 3 is 10. 10 divided by 2, 5. And lastly, negative 4 plus 4 is 0. 0 divided by 2, 0. So this would be your midpoint. Any questions? How do we do? So taking our x's, dividing it in half, y's divide by half, and z's divide by half. So Neil, you just have to relook at the first one, because 6 plus negative 10 is negative 4, but then you just needed to divide by the 2. Okay, good job. So now we're going to try distance. And distance, it does matter where you put your numbers. So the first thing I want us to do when we're given that formula is let's rewrite it. And I know it's crazy long, but it's going to make so much more sense. So everyone please write this with me. Because I'm going to teach you a quick trick that I always do when I'm using formulas. So I first always rewrite the formula. And then right under the formula, I make a blank formula. Here's what I mean by that. So I'm going to leave my x's blank, but I'm going to put in everything else. So I have a minus sign and a square, minus sign and a square, minus sign and a square. Couple reasons that I do this. Because now all I have to do is straight underneath the x2, I just have to fill in the number. Straight underneath the x1, I just have to fill in the number. And I'm never going to forget about putting the negative in there because my formula is already set up. It's just waiting for my numbers. I've been teaching math for 13 years, and every time I use these formulas, I do these steps. So I'm not saying it to create extra work for you. I'm doing it because then we're going to get the right answer the first time. All right, everybody ready? Okay. So let's go through and let's label our values first. So just like we did before, we said this is x, y, z, x, y, z. The first group gets the 1s. The second group gets the 2s. So let's do this together. Straight underneath x2, we're going to plug in a 1. Everybody see where that comes from? Because we have them labeled right here. So straight under x2, you're going to put a 1. Straight underneath x1, we are going to put a 5. So far, so good. Underneath y2, we'll put a 3. Underneath y1, a -4. This is the main reason I write my formula ahead of time, because then you're never going to miss that double negative that we just had happen. Underneath z2, let's fill in a 2. And underneath z1, we're going to fill in a 3. Everybody agree? Did you okay? Fabulous. So now let's solve. 1 minus 5 is -4. 3 plus 4 is going to be 7. And 2 minus 3 is -1. We're just taking it one step at a time. -4 squared is 16. 7 squared, 49. And -1 squared is the same as -1 times -1, so we're going to get +1. Add all that together, and we get 50 plus 16, so 66. Now, do I know the square root of 66 off the top of my head? Is 66 like 10 times 10, or 9 times 9, or 8 times 8? Is it any of those? No, it's not a perfect square, so you are absolutely allowed to use a calculator, but let me help you out. We can estimate this answer without a calculator. Are we ready to see how? We know that the square root of 64 is how much? 8. We know that the square root of 81 is 9. Do we all agree that 66 is in between 64 and 81? Yep. Everybody okay with that idea? So that means my answer is in between 8 and 9. So it's going to be a decimal. Watch how I can even do one better. 66, is it closer to 64 or 81? Where is it closer to? It's closer to the 8. So if I'm estimating my decimal, I can say, oh, it's probably like an 8.1 or an 8.2. If we try it on a calculator, it's actually 8.1. So are you allowed to use a calculator? Yes, you may use a calculator for your square roots that don't come out perfectly, but I really didn't have to. I would be able to pick out my multiple choice answer without it. Everyone okay? Smiley face at home if you're still with me. Hanging in there with me. Fabulous. Okay, huge test question alert. We ready? This one is on your test. I just changed the 2 numbers. So if you can do this problem, you're going to get it right on the test. So you know what I'm checking? Who's really taking notes? Who's really paying attention? Right? I don't mind giving you a question here or there that you're going to see again. So it says, this diagram shows a top view of an octagonal prism with a height of 15 feet. Find the volume. So really this is a 3D shape. They're only showing you as if you're standing over the shape and looking down on top of it. Does that make sense? It still actually has a height, which it tells us right here is 15. But it's not showing it to us in 3D. So it's saying, hey, here's the base. This one's the volume. Can you guys go back to your formula sheet and look up volume of a prism? Volume equals big B times H. Everybody okay? Big B times height? Okay, up here, what does it tell me my height is? 15. I'm only missing one piece of the puzzle to be able to solve. Is everybody with me so far? Just missing one thing. I'm just missing the big B. Big B stands for what? Area of the base. That means I have to find the area of this shape. I have to find the area of this stop sign. Kind of a weird shape to find the area of, right? But watch if I do this. What kind of shapes are inside of a stop sign?
Triangles.
Oh, they're triangles. So, really, all I need to do is find the area of one triangle, And then how many triangles are there? In a stop sign, how many triangles would there be? There would be 8. If it has 8 sides, there would be 8 triangles. So all I need to do is find the area of one and then times by 8. So let's do that together. Here we go. So area of a triangle. We just did this in our last example, right? 1/2 base times height. So it gave me the 6 over here. I'm just going to move the 6 down here. So the base of this triangle is 6. The height of this triangle is 10. They gave me everything that I needed to know. Does anyone have a question on how I got those two numbers? So remember, right now we're finding the area of this triangle. Area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. So my base is 6. My height of my triangle is 10. So what's half of 30? Or sorry, I gave you the answer. What's half of 60? 30. Sorry about that. So one triangle, let's write this out, equals 30. Everybody okay? One triangle is 30. How many total triangles do I have? 8. So I have to do 8 times 30. So 240 is all 8 triangles. So my big B is 240. 240 times 15 gives me 3,600 feet cubed for my volume. So yes, you will have one just like this. It's even an octagon. Okay, so I'm not tricking you on the test. It's the exact same shape. I'm just testing, do you know how to find one triangle times by the 8 triangles? That's how you get your big B. Questions? Good thing you have Monday to still study, right? Any that you're kind of stuck on from today's session, you have a whole nother day before your test. We are almost getting finished. We have a couple last ones to do. You had some problems in your homework, which I know Tyler and I were working on these the other day, which talks about finding the equation of this plane. And our plane is on a 3D graph now. So what do we notice about the intercepts for x, y, and z? Check this out. So when we're finding the x-intercept, the other two letters are what? 0. When I'm finding the y-intercept, the other two letters are 0. When I'm finding the z-intercept, my other two letters are 0. So whenever we're talking intercepts, your other values are always 0. So we're going to practice these 3 steps together. I would say this is the hardest question on the test. Okay, ready? We're going to try. So I gave you a picture of it. It's kind of a long process, but just see if you can follow along, and then you will have all of the steps that you need on the test. There were also lots of homework questions on this. So my formula is ax plus by plus cz equals d. We need to identify all of my intercepts. So I'm going to point to them, and then we're going to write them out, because I know on your notes they're kind of small. So this first dot up here would be 0, 0, 6, because on the z-axis it's up at 6. There's no x value, it's not forward or back. There's no y value, it's not side to side. It is just up 6. Now my x value is at 1, 0, 0. And my y value is at 0, 4, 0. The online slides did a pretty good job of walking you through these steps. There were quite a few examples on them, but it's always better to try them again with me. So the first time, we are going to use this formula and plug in this coordinate. Then I'm going to do this formula again, plugging in these coordinates. Then I'm going to do the formula for a third time, plugging in my z coordinates. So we have to do it 3 times. Are we ready? I know, it's long. I told you, it's the hardest question, I think. So here we go. We're going to start with 1, 0, 0. So in place of my x, I'm going to put in a 1. In place of my y, I'm putting in a 0. And in place of my z, I'm putting in a 0. I'm plugging in my first coordinates. I'm going to have this at the top in a box there. So one more time, where did those numbers come from? We're using these first coordinates first. So I plugged in a 1 for my x, a 0 for my y, and a 0 for my z. So watch what I have left. The zeros go away. So I get a times 1 equals d. If I'm trying to get a by itself, I'm going to divide by the 1. So a equals d over 1. This is weird. I know, it's really bizarre. Just hang in there with me. I'm going to draw a line. We're going to do that whole process again, but now we're going to use my next point. So a, but this time my x is 0, my b and my y is 4, and my c and my z is 0. So now I'm doing my purple one. My purple one is this middle equation right here. I'm just plugging in x, y, and z. Let's cross off what are zeros. So I get b4 equals d. Let's get b by itself. So b equals d over 4. And again, I know these steps are kind of bizarre. It's really strange working in 3 dimensions. Now I have one more time to do this process. Let's switch colors again. What haven't I used? Let's do like a light blue / green. Let's do this one. So one more time. A times my x is 0. B times my y is 0. C times 6 equals d. Cross off your zeros. Divide by 6, and we get c equals d over 6. How are we doing? Crazy weird? Kind of strange? So watch what we get to do now. We get to take my a, like pretend I said a equals 2. Couldn't I take a 2 and put it back where I see my a? That's what we do, right? If I give you a equals 10, I could take a 10 and put it where I see my a. A is d over 1. So I'm going to replace my a with a d over 1. I'm going to replace my b with a d over 4. And I'm going to replace my c with a d over 6. Strange, but we're allowed to do that. Substitution for math. I'm going to pull up a new page, and we're going to try again. Okay, so ax plus by plus cz equals d. My a is going to become d over 1. My b is going to become, d over 4. And my c has become d over 6. So my last step, we're really close to being done. I know it still looks strange. I need a common denominator for 1, 4, and 6. Can you guys all think of a bigger number that 1, 4, and 6 all go into? What's a bigger number they all have in common?
12.
12. Good job. We're going to multiply every single piece of this by 12. So times by 12, times by 12, times 12, times 12. So I'm going to get 12 dx plus 12 divided by 4 is 3 dy. 12 divided by 6 is 2 dz plus 12d. We are one step away from your answer. What do all 4 of the, oops, that should be equals 12d. What do all 4 of those things have in common? They all have a what in them? They all have a d. In math, if they all have the exact same letter, guess what I can do to that letter? I can cross them off. So my final answer, 12x plus 3y plus 2z equals 12. That is the equation of that plane that we just found. So the plane that I showed you, that triangle shaped thing that's at a slanting at an angle, this is the formula for it. It is a lot of steps. The steps are not hard. There's just a lot of them, right? The math is not hard anyway along the road. It's just a lot of steps to keep track of. So keep these notes handy. Check out, yep, I know all of that for one problem. I know. I'm in the same boat. But at least it will check whether or not you know how to do the problem. So it's not hard math. It's just keeping track of your steps. Okay, last question. If I show you this perspective drawing, which segment represents the depth? Give me a check mark if you think it's CD. Give me an X if you think it's BC. We're looking for depth. Hint, hint, this might be a test question too. So checks and X's on this picture. Which one represents depth? So CD is right here, and BC is right here. Good job. What do you guys think in the room? BC is correct, yes. What if I put a letter out here? What if I put a letter back here, like F, and I said that CF was also an option? Does it change anything? The answer is no. It doesn't change anything. BC is still the depth of your shape. Does that make sense? Not just because it's at the bottom, because depth always has to have a distance, right? And what's the distance of your shape? Here. This isn't part of your shape. This is part of what we call a one-point perspective drawing. What's this point out here called? Anybody remember the vocabulary word? Vanishing point. So this is your vanishing point. If I want the depth of the shape, I'm talking it has to be on the shape. This point would be called your vanishing point.
So this is really just like CD.
So CD is straight up and down.
Alright, well, what if that corner right there between C and D was labeled?
Here to here? Okay.
So the corner is right there is up.
This one? Okay, good question. So what if this one's labeled? Great question. What do you guys think about ED? Does ED show depth?
Yes.
Yes. Good job.
So
Perfect.
it has to be parallel to the vanishing point? Or not parallel, it has to be like kind of connected.
It goes in the same direction as the vanishing point. Yes. So it has to go front to back on your shape. Front to back on your shape. That's kind of the key to depth. Front to back on your shape. So it doesn't extend outside your shape. That would be your vanishing point. But depth would be front to back. How about left side? If I went here to here, is that still depth? Yes. There's lots of places to show depth on the shape. Good job, guys. So that's a wrap. Really best of luck to you guys on your Unit 1 test. If you guys keep practicing the ones I showed you today, you will definitely be ready. And just as a reminder, you do get extra credit for the homework worksheets when you turn them into the Dropbox or you drop it off in person on campus. So you can earn a maximum of 20 points per unit. Some students who have turned in all their homework this unit have over 100% right now. So should you do your homework? Yes is the answer. Because think about it. If you took a quiz on 1.02 and you got a 3 out of 5, but you did your homework, it's like you had 100% on that assignment. So every day you're giving yourself a 2-point buffer for every single quiz. It's totally worth it. So I will take homework up to a week past the test. So if you can't make it out here, you can always cam scanner it with your scanner and put it in the Dropbox. So thanks, guys. Have a fabulous rest of your day. Let me know if you have any questions.